The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been around long enough now that it's easy to take for granted. But long before Nick Fury ever thought about having a post-credit scene, there was another MCU. In the 80s. 1988 saw the launch of the first interconnected live-action Marvel world.
Hollywood was not steeped in those stories like they are now.
Back then, we didn't have all these different Marvel characters, the different Marvel film.
It was pioneering, really.
But making a shared universe is hard enough. Keeping it going, that's another story.
I like to live with the memory that it was a hit.
This is the inside story of a made-for-TV shared universe and the incredible MCU that time forgot.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Don't shoot him!
Dr. David Banner, physician, scientist, searching for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have.
For many years, the greatest success Marvel Comics had in adapting any of its characters to live action was with the Incredible Hulk TV series. Running from 1977 to 1982, it starred Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno as the two halves of the title character who you did not want to make angry. Its 5-season run followed 2 pilot movies that were, obviously, smash hits for CBS that even outdid the Green One's web-slinging brother. A Spider-Man TV show launched on CBS 2 months before the Hulk, but that production never had the same level of support at the network. Bounced around on the schedule and suffering from behind-the-scenes retooling, the Wallcrawler series ultimately ended after just 13 episodes. Despite airing on the same network, Spidey and the Hulk never got a chance to meet, but in 1977, even getting these characters on screen was a feat, let alone building a connected universe like the one that existed in Marvel's comics. Stan Lee and Marvel had been trying to get live-action movies and shows made based on their characters for years, but Hollywood had proved to be a cruel master. Ultimately, it was a deal with Universal Television that got the ball rolling, as the studio secured the live-action rights to 12 Marvel characters for the sum of $12,500. The characters under consideration included, among others, Doctor Strange, Captain America, the Human Torch, Miss Marvel, and the Submariner. CBS agreed to pay for 8 two-hour pilots, and Strange and Cap followed the Hulk and Spidey with TV movies of their own, though neither went to series. And the other characters in that deal never even made it that far. And yet, unlike in the comics where they had been born, there was never any indication that these characters would cross over to meet each other on screen. Their shows and movies all existed within their own unique worlds, when they weren't getting canceled or ignored by audiences or network executives, that is.
I was nervous because I don't know how it's going to be perceived by the public, because at the time, Spider-Man failed as a TV series. And I remember one of the assistant directors said to me, if anything happened, it could always go on VHS. I said, I don't want to be on VHS.
But, as conceived by writer-producer Kenneth Johnson, The Incredible Hulk was a hit, and it rose above the rest with its mix of pathos, action, and the fugitive-style drama as Bixby's David Banner, renamed for TV from Bruce, traveled across the country each week in search of a cure to his Hulkness, while unfailingly helping a new group of characters with their own inner demons by episode's end, before setting off to hitchhike to a new town and a new story. Man, it was great. And in the late 70s and early 80s, it left a gamma-fueled mark in the mainstream consciousness during its 5 seasons.
When it hit the air, it was like an explosion. It was like nothing I ever expected. It changed my whole life. If I covered my face, people knew who I was, just seeing the way I walked and everything. And it was embraced by every country in the world. So it was beyond my expectation.
By the time The Incredible Hulk had ended its run in 1982, regular non-comics reading folks could probably name a few superheroes off the top of their heads at most. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, and, thanks to this show, the Hulk.
Far out!
In the years after The Incredible Hulk went off the air, even with its unparalleled success, the mere idea of another live-action Marvel production was a dream for many fans. Stan Lee and company execs were making deals for movies and shows that would mostly never happen. Complicating things further, some of these deals would tie up various characters in arrangements with other studios that Marvel contended with for decades after. On top of that, the company itself was undergoing various corporate shifts, including being purchased by New World Pictures in 1986. What Marvel really is to us is an idea factory, according to Harry Evan Sloan, co-chairman of New World at the time. The opportunity to exploit these ideas with New World's existing motion picture and theatrical operations is very exciting. If that reasoning sounds familiar, it's because Disney employed the same logic when they eventually bought Marvel in 2009 and doubled down on the modern MCU. So it was time for New World to take its shot at a shared universe. With its idea factory in place, it only made sense for New World to go back to the well of Marvel's most successful live-action venture to date.
Everybody was excited because people missed seeing the Hulk, because at the time when Hulk was canceled, because it had to do with the budget problem. But then I was excited that when Bill came back, and then we're going to do a whole new feature film, TV movie, everybody was excited.
On May 22nd, 1988, 6 years after the show had ended, the NBC TV movie, The Incredible Hulk Returns, reunited Bixby, Ferrigno, and Jack Colvin, who had played the nosy investigative reporter Jack McGee on the series, but one new character also joined the group. The mighty Thor. This was, officially, the first time that two Marvel superheroes met in live action. True, Thor, as played by Eric Allan Kramer, was a little different than his comics counterpart.
I was always a big Marvel guy as well as a kid. When I initially got it, all my friends and everybody started sending me comic books and the like. You came to realize pretty quick that what we were doing, it wasn't different from the comics so much as it was a more sort of unique take.
This Thor didn't seem to actually be a god, but rather a Viking warrior from centuries ago whose spirit has bonded with a modern man named Donald Blake. As played by Steve Levitt, Blake is goofy comic relief, a guy trying to come to terms with the fact that he has this strange new partner he just can't shake.
Hold it, big fella. I need some answers from you.
It's a clear variation on the Incredible Hulk's Jekyll and Hyde theme with a lighter sensibility.
You know, it was really a buddy movie. And I think that's what made it fun, and that's what made it really human in parts.
We learn that Odin punished the brash Thor by not allowing him to enter the afterlife of Valhalla until he proves himself through heroism and learning humility by having to follow Blake's lead. So there is a thread of fidelity to the source material there, even if the particulars are different. True to comic book fashion, though, before uniting to battle the real villains of the film, the Hulk and Thor battle it out upon first meeting.
This'll send you back to hell, you ugly troll!
It was all just so much fun. You're tearing apart a lab, you've got things exploding, going off. You know, the stunt guys took a bit of a beating.
Like the original Hulk, when you see the Hulk fighting the other Hulk, it was done by a stunt person. So he looked kind of like weak compared to me, but when you have like Eric Kramer, he's a big guy too. So you get to see two powerful superheroes fighting. It was one of my favorite shows.
I really was just a kid, you know, and so I would have to stop myself every once in a while and look around and go, holy crap, look at where I am. I'm fighting the Hulk. I'm fighting Lou Ferrigno.
He's a strong guy, but you can put your money on me.
The dynamic between the foursome of Banner, Blake, Hulk, Thor is legitimately fun, and the Viking warrior even gives his new green comrade a nickname.
Good work, troll!
I remember when it hit the air, it was probably just as popular as the TV series, especially with the Hulk being absent for 5 or 6 years. It was great.
And even while it was a hit, if there's a knock against The Incredible Hulk Returns, it's Thor's overall look.
Well, my first thought was, wow, these are some big-ass furry shoulders. It was different, and it was heavy. It wasn't any kind of plastic or anything. It was all metal. It was all done by these great guys. They were all Renaissance Fairs guys.
Still, the genesis of an interesting, if decidedly late 80s TV version of Thor and Blake is clearly at work here in what was intended as a backdoor pilot for a spin-off Thor series. But the producers of the film would soon find that creating a live-action shared universe is easier than maintaining said universe.
It was always the talk that this was really a pilot for a series, and that was actually negotiated when I got the role. So there was always that sort of understanding. And then of course, you know, we go into the writer's strike, and you know, it could have all boiled down to they just weren't interested. But I think we went up against a couple of things that really hurt us, one of which was the writer's strike.
The mighty Thor defeated by contract negotiations.
The Hound returns meekly to the kennel of Odin.
The 1988 Writers Guild strike lasted for over 7 months and adversely affected the industry in a variety of ways, leading to delayed programming, shortened seasons, and apparently the first blow to the original MCU. And so, hope of a Thor series went up in Ragnarokian flames. But for a hint of what could have been, take the moment where Thor describes what it's like to not exist while he's waiting to be summoned by Blake.
Without blood pumping through your limbs, with no heart and no chest to hold it. And still, at the same time, to be awake. And then, Blake, to hear the call. It's like a war horn in battle. And then, to awaken, as you were, when men and women ate life with shining teeth. But I am what I always will be. And I need to drink.
I don't know about ahead of its time. I mean, certainly you look back on that now and where the Marvel universe is now, and you go, holy cow. Maybe that was the beginning of something. Maybe that was the way that the rest of it had to happen.
Whether you're willing to call it ahead of its time or not, the fact remained a shared live-action universe of Marvel heroes now existed.
I knew he thought it was a good plan!
It was the sort of thing that readers of the comics were well acquainted with and had long wished to see on screen. A world where your favorite character could meet your other favorite character at any moment, rights issues be damned. Sure, it was a relatively humble made-for-TV movie adventure, but it was our relatively humble made-for-TV movie adventure. And most importantly, for a fledgling shared universe, The Incredible Hulk Returns had been a Hulk-sized hit.
Well, we came back with the return of the Hulk, and then with the assumption that we became successful, then New World would get the green light for the trial of the Incredible Hulk.
To keep the universe expanding, New World needed to get while the getting was still good. Just 5 months after The Incredible Hulk Returns aired, New World and NBC announced that at least 2 more Hulk TV movies would be produced, with the goal of introducing She-Hulk, Daredevil, and Iron Man, the most popular of whom would then hopefully jump into their own show. And the next character to join the burgeoning MCU was the Man Without Fear in 1989's The Trial of the Incredible Hulk. Directed by Bixby himself, Trial featured Rex Smith as a fairly comics-faithful rendition of the character.
Well, imagine this at the time. Marvel was not the universe it is now. And just right off the top, being the original Daredevil,
This knife hurts my ears.
it was a far cry from what it is now, but it was part of a cornerstone of what has become the dominant entertainment in the world.
Indeed, at the time, the idea of fan service wasn't really a thing, nor was it a particularly important part of the mission given to the film's writer, Gerald Di Pego.
What Bill wanted from me was the kind of emotional reality that you might say that I was known for in my novels and screenplays. All the Marvel Universe atmosphere, I enjoyed that. I got a kick out of it, but I had to go inside that and do my kind of work and make it as real and emotional as possible.
The film finds a particularly down-on-his-luck Banner moving to an unnamed city that is pretty clearly Vancouver. He transforms into the Hulk in order to save a woman from some thugs on the subway, but is actually caught by the police after turning back into Banner. Luckily, the blind defense attorney by day, vigilante crime fighter by night, Matt Murdock, takes on his case. Aside from Daredevil moving from Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan to a house in the suburbs, he apparently commutes into the city to fight crime. This version of Matt Murdock features the classic origin story, right down to the toxic waste and the boxer father.
Last thing I saw was a wave of green liquid. Kind of radioactive liquid.
And Bixby, as director, effectively conveys his Daredevil vision with a cool late 80s effect. Oddly enough, the character's black suit, as seen here, has become retroactively faithful to the comics as well.
You know, I go through these fittings for costuming, and we settled on the black The black worked.
In 1989, it seemed odd not to have the classic red tights, but a few years later, comics legend Frank Miller revealed in the miniseries Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, that Murdoch had actually donned a black costume in his earliest outings as a hero. And of course, Charlie Cox's version of the character would also wear black in the first season of the Netflix show before getting a costume upgrade. Daredevil's traditional arch-rival is also the main bad guy in the movie, as played by Indiana Jones and Lord of the Rings actor John Rhys Davies. This is a, well, different version of Fisk to be sure, and he's never actually called the Kingpin, but for the first time, the Hulk had a supervillain, a cornerstone for any would-be Marvel universe, second only in importance to a Stan Lee cameo. Trial also had the first one of those too. But after defeating Fisk, Banner and Murdoch part ways with a bond formed between them, and a new corner of the superhero world uncovered. The filmmakers also took pains to lay the groundwork for another spin-off series set up by the escaping Wilson Fisk.
That was an absolute, because the whole reason to do these 3 movies was not just to show the Hulk again, but to bring in the other universe characters. So if you're going to bring in Daredevil and Kingpin, you're certainly not going to put them in jail or kill them off, you know. So yeah, that was kind of dictated from the start.
It was not just a guest star thing for a film. This whole effort was a springboard for a series for the Daredevil. And we were so excited, John and I both. He was signed on for the series too, to be my Moriarty for Sherlock Holmes. There would be other baddies, but the real baddie that was always had his hand in it was going to be John Rhys.
In 1989, however, the tide was turning for the live-action superhero genre. A little more than a month after Trial aired, Tim Burton's Batman was released, a part that Rex Smith himself was actually well in the running for.
Warner Brothers wanted me, and the director wanted Michael Keaton because he'd done Beetlejuice with him. I'd had a meeting, several meetings. I sit down with the president, she goes, what Sean Connery is to James Bond, you will be to Batman. That's pretty heady stuff to sit there and listen to.
While it was Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne that took the world by storm, it was clear the competition in comic book adaptations had suddenly gotten a lot stiffer. And the Daredevil show, before it could even get out of the gate, would take a fatal hit from a more direct, small-screen competitor in the form of a DC character on CBS.
And I hear from my agent, he goes, we have a problem. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, they bought your contract for the Daredevil because they're coming out with the Flash and they don't want the competition. So NBC sold your contract. I don't know what they paid or whatever, but they didn't want any competition. They wanted to have the only superhero show. So the Flash got it and Daredevil got buried.
The Flash series, starring John Wesley Shipp, would debut in the fall of 1990, lasting just 1 season. But Smith's Daredevil, like Kramer's Thor before him, was done, never to be seen again. But meanwhile, the would-be MCU had a bigger villain than the Flash standing in its way. With the latest bad break, New World and Bill Bixby were now 0 for 2 in their plans to expand their shared universe. However, behind the scenes, New World was having financial troubles, difficulties that led to a stretch of corporate reshuffling in which Marvel was sold along with the licensing right to the characters that could have populated New World's Hulkverse. Perhaps that's why the last installment in this short-lived MCU hedged its bets on the superhero guest star front. In 1990, the death of the Incredible Hulk, again directed by Bixby and written by Gerald Di Pego, would prove to be the swan song for this version of the character. Regarding the apparent demise of his iconic character, Bixby told the Star Tribune at the time, "This is the whole reason for which the Hulk was born, and it doesn't involve many outside characters. It's a story in itself, a wonderful love story and a very thrilling adventure." So, despite earlier talk of a She-Hulk or Iron Man appearance, Banner instead teams up with a beautiful foreign spy played by future Highlander star Elizabeth Gracen.
This was my first big TV job, and it sort of started a pattern for me getting to play characters who get to wear wigs and get to be, these different personas. My character, Jasmin, was this sort of spy and master of disguises.
The character's Black Widow-esque traits are clear, but there was never any intention for her to actually be Natasha Romanoff. And in fact, it seems likely Bill Bixby and co. were excited to focus solely on Banner and the Hulk meeting their demise.
We had kind of a a clear shot with the death, because by the time we got to the death, the network had backed off at this point. So they already knew that the death would be the last film. You know, they left us alone. And in a way, that was a good thing for us, because we just went ahead with what turned out to be a very emotional show and part love story.
In the film, Banner once again finds himself working in a lab where the possibility of a cure is tantalizingly close. Along the way, he falls in love with the spy Jasmin. But the Bixby Ferrigno Hulk doesn't do happy endings, and in a final act of heroism, he is thrown from an exploding plane and dies.
David, don't. Don't die. We could be free now.
Jasmin. I am free.
Here he is at the very end, at the very final possibility of yes or no. Yes, he's going to be free, or no, he's going to die, or he's going to, the worst possible thing is he's going to continue with this, terrible thing, which he, obviously has been running away from all this time. So the seriousness of it and the emotional power of that final chance, I think was good for the film.
Come to think of it, maybe that does count as a happy ending for this version of The Incredible Hulk. After 13 years of searching for peace, he had finally found it, and in the arms of a woman he loved, no less. Even after the death of Bixby and Ferrigno's Hulk, the appetite for more Hulkverse persisted, among the fans at least. At one point in Death, Gracen's character is wounded, and Banner has to stitch her up. Fans, however, interpreted this as Gracen getting a blood transfusion as a sort of communal wish fulfillment, a misread of the scene that persisted as a fan theory for years. It's a classic example of the so-called Mandela effect.
You're just dreaming.
I don't think there was a blood transfusion, because I'm stuck in a cabin with him and he has to use a fish hook, so I'm assuming there's no blood transfusion there. The idea that I could have been a She-Hulk, oh my God, that would have been so much fun.
And while everything seemed to be going against the Hulkverse, including airing in a time slot against a highly anticipated miniseries about the Kennedys, the death of the Incredible Hulk had at least one fan, one that was even married to a Kennedy.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and his lovely wife, Maria Shriver.
And it was funny that I was in the gym, Schwarzenegger came up to me. Arnold, he said, I watched the end of the death of the Hulk, even though I'm with my wife, Maria. I decided not to watch the Kennedy miniseries because I wanted to watch the death of the Hulk.
A Schwarzenegger endorsement aside, there were at least 2 more attempts to keep it going after the death of the Incredible Hulk. Both would have brought the character back to life in true comic book style.
As soon as I wrote the death, I wrote an outline for bringing him back again.
Well, Bill's idea was we were to come back called The Revenge of the Hulk, where they find Bixby at the time he died, and the death of the Hulk, they find one blood cell, they bring him back to life. And the next episode, I would have Bixby, David Banner's mind inside the Hulk.
At that point in my life, I lived in Santa Monica, and so did Lou Ferrigno. We'd see each other all the time, walking down the street or going to Blockbuster or something. And he'd see me and he'd yell across the street or in the store. He'd say, Jerry, you killed me.
I said, Jerry, why'd you come up with the death of the Hulk? I said, you trying to kill me or what?
And it was all in fun, luckily for me.
He just laughed. He was a wonderful writer, but I remember that I didn't like that title, The Death of the Hulk.
The other post-Death of the Incredible Hulk project would have finally brought She-Hulk into the mix, though it would not have been Elizabeth Gracen's Jasmin. The She-Hulk series got as far as partially filming a pilot titled Metamorphosis, with Bixby even returning as David Banner for one final time, alive and well, and with no explanation of how he survived falling out of that plane. After giving a blood transfusion to Jessica Walters, played by future Silk Stocking star Mitzi Capture, Banner unwittingly creates the She-Hulk, who would be played by professional volleyball player, model, and actress Gabrielle Reese. But the plan was to mix up the look of the character by giving her gold skin and bright red hair instead of the traditional green. Unfortunately, after filming for several days on location in the Virgin Islands, the project was canned.
Years later, it would have been easy to accept it, but back then, we had a more educated public what a superhero was, because the general public didn't know what She-Hulk was. But the thing is, I remember they're starting to shoot in the Bahamas. I was supposed to definitely be in the film, but then it didn't work out with the studio.
And just like that, the first Marvel Cinematic Universe was over. Of all the crucial things required of a shared universe, the first and most necessary is a driving force to make it happen. Bill Bixby served that purpose for this entire endeavor. If not the creative, producerial architect that Kevin Feige has become, Bixby provided a steady hand to steer the ship. He died in 1993 after a battle with prostate cancer, but he left behind him a legacy of kindness and warmth the people that knew him still talk about.
Bill Bixby, who was exactly what you hoped Bill Bixby would be. Really one of the greatest, warmest, nicest, most human people that I've ever met.
I just, adore Bill Bixby so much because, and I'm so grateful that he took a chance on me because I really didn't have a lot of, I had guest star stuff, but he took a chance on me, and I can't think of a better way to, so I'm going to actually cry, it makes me feel emotional, a better way to have started my career than with him.
Bill was such a galvanizing person that the crew, the cast, everybody adored him. I came home and I looked at my answer machine. There was like 18 or 20 messages. And the first one, it was, hello, Daredevil. This is Bill Bixby. I wanted to be the first to call you and welcome you to the show.
He remembered how it was as an actor starting out. And he remembered that, and that made him a very kind man, a very kind director to work with.
But the nice thing about Bill is that Bill appealed to everyone. He had that perfect look. You see him in the TV series. If it was in real life, you want to take him in your house because he's such a warm person. He had that beautiful quality about himself that just radiated.
Marvel would continue to struggle with successfully launching live-action incarnations of their characters through most of the 90s. Finally, Blade, and then X-Men, and then Spider-Man would break that trend. But another shared universe of characters, like the one in the Bixby Ferrigno movies, wouldn't happen until Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk hit theaters in 2008. So, even as the modern MCU continues relentlessly into the future, it's fun to think about what might have been if the original Marvel Cinematic Universe had continued. One where Thor, Daredevil, Kingpin, and more crossed paths with the Hulk. It took decades of trying and failing to even end up on the screen in the first place. It took hard-earned good breaks to make it happen, and tough luck bad breaks to derail it. It was, in its way, kind of incredible.